Hey guys.
Happy Thursday.
Yes, happy Thursday.
We got a conference room dial in today. Rare privilege for us. Jeff, is that you asking about the new API responses?
Yep, that's me. It's a loaded question, I know.
I I had a suspicion based off conversations we've been seeing. All right, this week y'all don't get to see my face. I'm too much of a mess. You're finding me in between caulking and painting. So with that, let's see, did I get everybody on the Derek joined us. Welcome, Derek. Must be Container D
Hello,
Day.
it is. You know it.
I need to just start adding that to my calendar.
You should.
Not
You
so
should
that
come to the Container Deep.
I was just about to say, not so that I could come to the Container D, but just so I would know when you'd like be blessing us with your presence.
Yeah, it's easier
Alrighty.
to chain these meetings together, I guess.
I imagine so. So Tianon had me make a change. We took away your review on the blob push location. Sorry. So we're just looking for one more over there. Again.
Oh, that's an easy one. Okay.
Yeah, I figured that would be an easy, quick one. Um, this one, Tina and I kind of I don't know we so much went back and forth on, but I just saw Tianon looking sad, so I figured I would check in and make sure you weren't too sad there, Tianon. I mean, you approved it, so you couldn't be too upset.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see Chain ID die. I think
But
it should
did you
go
see the
away.
places that was being used? Like, Derek is here. You're saying this right to his face.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not convinced that it serves value for these projects, or at least that it serves value for OCI to specifically define it as an explicit thing. Like the the thing that bothers me here is that there's no real interoperability between the projects using the same definition of chain ID. Like
Yeah.
they don't expose the chain ID in a way that causes interoperability. It's just a convenient way to express this concept
And I
that
don't
doesn't
think you're
work
at all
well.
wrong. I pretty much agree with you on that one. But I just felt like if I ripped it out, I didn't want to break Container D.
Yeah, no, I mean obviously I approve the PR. I don't disagree with not ripping it out. But I also wouldn't disagree with ripping it out either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if chain ID needs to be a OCI concept.
Yeah.
I would agree with that sentiment. It's for local storage, but also chain ID is, I would say, it's also a bit of a pain. Uh,
We've kind of imported all over the place. And so that was why I didn't yank it. And it is used by Containerd and a bunch of other projects.
you
But
can
yeah,
annoy people by putting a deprecated marker on it.
I could just terrify the whole world. That was an actual option, but I figured if I was going to do that kind of insane option there, that I would make it a separate PR. That way people could be upset at one PR and not hold up the layered diff IDs. Was it diff ID? No, it was image IDs changes we were making. Figured separate those two.
I mean, if we
Yeah.
want to get rid of diff ID as well, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be a little more interesting. I'll hold off on that. Tianon, I feel like you like to break stuff.
Yes,
Go
yes,
for it.
yes. Let's get rid of diff ID.
I mean, it's one of those things that the uniqueness of an image can be determined by the client. It doesn't need to be exported. So we, I mean, the point of these in the first place was because the image ID was derived from the image config, and the image config didn't actually have any cryptographic value associated with the file system. So that was the whole reason. But that could go one step further and be like, don't use the image config as the image ID. So yeah, you could
Yeah,
you could play that game
use,
all day long of don't do this, don't do
So
that.
so that is what this PR is saying. Don't do it.
yeah, yeah.
Previously, it was documented as the digest of the configuration, but some people are using the manifest and other things, and maybe it's no longer unique if people are doing artifacts. So hey, all the people are doing this before, maybe think about other ways.
You actually
Yeah.
get some really neat benefits if you use the manifest digest instead. Like the fact that now you have a cryptographic SHA pointer to the actual object, the literal object.
Yeah, our I don't even know that it's really that important anymore. It's just that was an artifact of CRI, which was came over from Docker, and yeah, that we have to have special logic just to recreate that image ID in the first place because we don't actually in Containerd we don't actually use the image ID outside of CRI. But people get mad when IDs change.
Irrationally so. But yeah, they certainly do.
It's amazing how many people notice when a hash changes on content. I mean, I guess that's good, but it's a surprising number of folks be like, hey, I pulled this image before and now this ID is different internally. Not even like the registry one didn't change, it's the same image, but like internally they'll notice if the ID changes.
Maybe it means people are doing reproducible stuff, which would be even more awesome. So yeah, that one's sitting out there. Look at that. I got 2 checks on this thing. Derek, were you a maintainer over there? Oh, that we were in
Oh, this is
distribution spec.
distribution
Sorry.
spec.
Sorry, wrong one.
No, I'm not. I don't review anything on image
That's why I
spec.
was like image spec. I knew Tianon gave the check over there, but yeah, we still need another one, and then we need to fix this one because the CI is broken, and we're working on fixing that one. And I figure I wasn't gonna throw that on the agenda. We're still making good progress over there, not like fixed up today. Alrighty.
You can merge
Um,
it with broken CI, right?
we can't, but we won't. We'll be good.
Okay.
I don't know that I'll rebase it. I might just kick the CI off again after we fix the other PR, and then we'll just do an out of order merge. That way I don't have to go back and get reviews from people.
Yeah, you'll probably have to do a close and reopen to get it to reconsider the head branch again.
Oh,
But I don't think that will dismiss the reviews.
oh man, you're pushing for it there. Alrighty. We do have a whole lot of people that don't normally show up to these meetings, and I'm guessing the next one here asking about the OCI auth spec. I saw in the notes there that that was Chen, was it? Yi Chen?
Yeah, hi. This is from ECR and also Abhishek meeting room from ECR. Michael is out of office today, so today we are going to consult about the long-term direction of the OCR spike in terms of basic ORs and bear token ORs. As we sent out the topic yesterday in the Slack chat is about ECR has been using HTTP basic ORs for more than 10 years, and now we're evaluating whether there's a benefit for us to move to Docker bearer token spike. And based on our investigation, we currently didn't find any compelling reason to move to a token exchange workflow, but we wanted to understand what's the long-term direction of the OCR spike decision on these two token models, and if there are any trade-offs that OCR group have think about better use case for bearer token model that we should consider at this stage.
I was waiting for someone to jump in here. I figured someone will want to jump in.
Wait, was there a doc sent out somewhere? I didn't see that.
Was there a what?
Was it on Slack? Oh,
There was a message over on Slack. They were asking for some feedback over there. Yeah, I'll just chime in and say that the goal from the working group perspective that I'm aware of, and that I'm told if I don't do, I'll get people upset at me, is to try to replicate the existing Docker spec that everybody is using for all this time as best as possible for at least whatever we do in V1. And then in the future, if we want to add to it, we would add to it. I don't think we would make breaking changes, taking stuff away. There are just too many clients out there that are using the workflow out there for both bearer and token. The bearer tokens and the basic authentication are just built into too many tools out there already. So the goal is whatever we specify over here, we don't want to break everybody as best we can. So hopefully that gives you the starting point. I think there's a lot of value in doing more with token authentication beyond just the bearer tokens. But I think that would be like a V next, like a 1.1 or V2 of whatever comes out of the authentication working group. Or it might no longer be a working group at that point. It might just be a spec that gets merged. I do want to set some expectations, though. This one had been merged 3 years ago that we said we were going to start this working group. And then we kicked it off for about a year and then kind of fizzled a little bit. So I think it's just waiting for maintainers to get time again to start working on this. And I don't see that happening in the near future. So it's just going to sit there and just kind of this working group stage of pending. We'll eventually get back to it, but it's just not the top of anybody's plate right now.
Got it. So does this mean make sure I understand the basic ORs and bearer token ORs, like existing registry and client support, they will continue to be supported in this new OCR spike. I think the moral question from us is there any new use case or feature that you think, like you said, other ORs types, they might based on the bearer token ORs and basic ORs could not be compatible with them?
I think there's a case to be made to add more authentication options with token authentication beyond just what's going on in bearer authentication right now today. There are people that want to authenticate with their Kubernetes token, and they're already doing stuff with that. So that might just be adopting whatever people are already doing out in the ecosystem right now. So there is a case to be made to make this more than just what's currently specified in some of the upstream Docker specs from back in the day. But I don't think it's going to be coming into our first revision of whatever this comes out with. I think that would be a next revision for the group to spin up to just say extra functionality.
So, I mean, you're coming at this from ECR, which my understanding is likes to use like HMAX or some other approach of the authentication there. Is that kind of the question of like there's kind of two aspects to this. There's what the registry returns, whether it's basic or bearer auth. And normally with bearer auth, it's going to have a realm, and that realm, what we've defined here is a way that Docker does it in order to like get the bearer token. And that's kind of uses a semi OAuth, or it's like mostly OAuth, but not completely OAuth because it's yeah, I would say OAuth-like mechanism for getting that bearer token. But on top of that, like you could support different mechanisms for doing that. I think what Brandon's saying is like, well, we're not looking to create new stuff here. I mean, more V1 is defining having a clear scope of like this is what's actually supported by clients out there. You could certainly go and support more, and but having the clients actually support it is kind of it's a different challenge in of itself, just to get any change like throughout a critical mass of clients that it's actually useful. I know on the Containerd side, we've tried to make this so that you can plug in and do whatever auth you want, but that's only if you're using Containerd. And I know there is like specific ECR plugins for Containerd to do exactly that. So like my question is kind of like what the scope of what you're looking for there, what you're kind of hoping to get out of that.
Yeah, so the scope we are currently looking is currently our registry returns the basic scheme, and we don't support any token exchange these workflows today. And so we are thinking about if we continue this model, is there any other, I mean, in future, the use case or new authentication type are going to support it in OCI or Spike will be the basic auth without token exchange will be incompatible with that.
Yeah, primarily ECR has this auth for almost past 10 years now, although it's basic auth, but primarily a token that has your IAM credentials signed by SigV4. So yeah, when we were thinking about our new token strategy, we thought that maybe we move to this bearer auth, but we were not being able to really figure out what are the benefits do we get there, because whatever we can do with that bearer auth, we can primarily do with basic auth and the IAM credential that we have. So yeah, there were, at least for me, there were two questions. One, should we be concerned around continuing with the basic auth if we believe that is secure enough or provides the same security benefits that bearer would provide us? And the second was around, yeah, like maybe we are not thinking about this correctly, and maybe bearer auth actually can give something more than basic. So yeah, since we are revamping almost after 10 years, we were very open for guidance or consultants there.
I wouldn't expect either. I wouldn't expect basic or bearer auth to go away. And from the actual interaction from the client to the registry, I mean, would stay roughly the same in terms of like what the registry actually returns. So I think the only thing there is we could add support for something other than basic or bearer, but the actual like basic and bearer it's just pure HTTP, like what's defined in that spec. And I don't think that there's any problem using basic for the case you're talking. The specific reason why Bear was created and defined in that way is because the way distribution can be scaled out separately from the token servers. So that's more of just like a scaling architecture that you don't want to scale out your authentication server to the same degree that you're necessarily scaling out your actual registry backend. So you can deploy registry backends with essentially no secrets. You can deploy a registry backend with just a public key of the tokens that you will accept, and you can scale that out much safer than something that you might want to centralize or have fewer. So yeah, no, Jeff knows. But if you, like most infrastructure, would already have a layer in between that would handle the basic and then send it off somewhere else. Yeah, there's no I wouldn't say that, oh yeah, use bearer over basic in that case. It's more like if you can scale out with basic, like why not just use basic? I wouldn't say that bearer is better. Now, if we actually defined a good OAuth mechanism to use bearer with, I would say that's different, but I think that's too much of a challenge. I've tried that before and gave up. It's too much of a challenge here to
Yeah.
to do like real OAuth.
Yeah. So just to give you a little more context, we were working with IAM to figure out this token exchange, and we were like, because IAM recently did some work around OAuth, and then we realized the OAuth they ended up building was not even compatible with OCI, because one of the major things they ended up adopting from the OAuth protocol was that the refresh token refreshes on every fetch of the access token, and that kind of just broke all the clients that we have. So we were like, oh, this is. Then we actually learned about how the Docker OAuth is not really the OAuth. So yeah, this was some learning that we had in the past 6 months.
Yes, it's a bit of a challenge to do OAuth in that protocol because it starts off as zero knowledge about the OAuth server, which isn't really the correct way to do OAuth. Usually when you're trying to OAuth between a client and a server, there's some configuration that would be agreed on for how that interaction is going to happen. So since we don't have that, from a client perspective, this lightweight OAuth-like protocol is just used for exchanging. It's not great. And I mean that could be in the scope of the working group to figure out how you'd want to do like prior knowledge OAuth or be able to configure clients in such a way where they could actually do like a real OAuth protocol and do like a real OAuth dance there, because once you're actually got to a bearer response from a registry, at that point, it's expected that the client has already actually logged into that registry and already done something today, which means like if there's a refresh token, the expectation is that the client already has the refresh token. But we don't have any way to define how login happens, like how anything, like how any of the credentials or any of the state is managed on the client end in order to do that bearer. So it's a pretty light protocol today, and I would say on Containerd side, that's why we have it very pluggable to be able to swap that out. But it's expected that the swap is actually done by cloud providers rather than by like on an individual like plugin per registry basis.
Makes sense.
I will say if you're looking for kind of a compare and contrast between the two as you're making the change from basic to bear, for me, the client side can't do anonymous request, like potentially having some requests anonymous and other requests with authentication without using bear, without being able to tell the registry proactively, this will be an anonymous request. So the registry, if it's not sure if the client wants to log in, it has no way to tell the client to conditionally log in with basic authentication. It just sends that basic authentication back, and anybody that want to be anonymous, sorry, they just hit a brick wall. So that's a big plus if you want to have that functionality of, differential access, including anonymous request. For me, when I implement on the server side, the speed of the hashing for every one of those basic requests to verify the backend that password matched whatever the credential, that was taking overhead for me that I didn't need to have if I had some big long token that I didn't mind just matching the token to another token. So I was able to considerably reduce some of the server overhead. I don't know if you're going to face that just depending on how you've implemented on the back end, but that was another thing that I hit. I think Derek already mentioned separating the roles. So you got the role of the registry server that just knows here's the data, here's who has access, versus how do I authenticate these users and what should they be accessing. You can split those responsibilities to different servers when you do bearer authentication. So that's a big plus. And then I'll throw one con at you, which is managing scopes, especially if you have long-lived clients. That was something that I've run into, and I don't think we have. It is an open question for the auth working group because I don't think it's ever been specified anywhere in any of the specs. We haven't really defined how to do it, which is if you have a long-lived client that is connecting to one repository and then connects to another repository, and then connects to another repository, is each one of those a separate scope request? If it connects to the second repository B, does it, and it sends you the authentication from repository A, does the server know to bounce back and say, no, you need to give me a new request with repository B as the place you're trying to get access to? Or does it think that you've already tried and failed? There are a lot of questions like that come into play for that scenario, which I think the easy answer is I just shouldn't have ever even tried that and just try to mirror the other clients. It just makes every repository tree as almost like a whole separate server that I'm talking to. So a few things to think about as you're implementing it, stuff to worry about, things that you'll run into at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think these are definitely pretty good call outs, and we'll go back and look into those variables and see if we want to move to the bearer for ECR.
Yeah.
Based on ECR's current.
Yeah, I think ECR is only one of the only registries I figured who still uses basic, but the way we use it, it kind of works. But
Yeah.
better. Sounds
And
I
good.
mean,
just
if you
to-
can scale basic out, I mean, I would say you don't need bearer. I said it's mostly like a scale out problem. As Brandon was saying, like with the scopes, it's like you don't necessarily want. There's certainly the authentication part, which is nice to centralize, but then also being able like doing that authorization for every single scope, can get expensive.
Yeah.
So that's why we tend to. You can kind of do that check once and encapsulate that in a token and then use that for bearer. And then the actual check of the token is going to be much cheaper than, say, doing an authorization check in the back end. So like from that perspective, like, yeah, I think bearer token will scale much easier. But then you have to deal with like scope lifespan and stuff but we already kind of deal with that on the client side. Like the scoping thing is kind of annoying because it's a non-standard standard that we have to keep track of on the client side because yes, if we know if we're trying to pull from repository, or I guess it's more of the push. If we know we're trying to push to repository A, that's fine. But if we want to do like a cross repository mount, we also need to know we need a scope to push to repository A, but we also need a scope to read from repository B, which maybe is trying to cross repository mount for. We actually keep track of that on the client side, and then when we do the bearer request, if we have a token to push to repository A, but now we want to do a cross repository mount from repository B, we'll actually like increase the scope and then see like, oh, the token we have doesn't have that scope. We'll go request a new token from the token server in order to do that request. Basic actually makes that a little easier because it puts that burden completely on the registry to figure out like okay, like the scope that's needed for this request. You do the authentication, the authorization all in one.
Yeah.
But that's kind of expensive for it can be that can be much more expensive in your infrastructure though, having to do those authorization requests from every edge node that's handling the registry response. But that's to each their own on their infrastructure.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes a lot of sense.
And to throw a little bit more context, I mentioned we haven't met in a long while. We were last meeting in 2024, and the meetings kind of went scattered few and far between. But myself and Jeff were trying to carry that one, and I think we just kind of fizzled out. Sachi was also there a little bit, but we lost momentum, and people got pulled off into other things, and so it just kind of went into a permanent sitting on the side until people had time to pick it back up again.
Yeah, we somehow reached this dock, and that's how we realized that there used to be a working group, but not really active. And we were like, let's go and talk with Brandon and team.
Yeah. Cancel pending. I didn't want to keep saying every week we were canceled for another week. So
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. This was super helpful.
one other thing to think about, we've got the distribution spec has a conformance suite, and we put our best attempt in there for how to do user and password authentication in there, and that handles both bearer and basic authentication in the back end. So if you're trying to make sure your implementation looks right, this can be an extra thing to check in addition to all the other clients you want to try to support.
Sure. We'll take a look at this.
Oh, trouble in the comment section again. There's always trouble in the comment section. Alrighty. Is there anything else you'd like to chat about on that one?
No, I think that's all.
Yeah, that's
That'd be
super
good.
helpful.
Yeah.
We'll go deeper our side, and then if we have more questions, we'll join back.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to bring us any questions you've got, either here, Slack. Michael's also been pretty active on a lot of this stuff too. So anything we can do to help there. All right, Jeff, you're up.
Yeah. What am I talking about?
You wanted to talk about response formats for new
Oh,
APIs.
yeah, that one. I think it's a good one. It's a great conversation. Um, yeah, so there's a comment made by Michael Brown, I believe, in the proposal I had for tag history about not sending back an index and actually doing just a JSON response. And we had talked about that in this meeting a few weeks back and kind of ultimately landed on it. Hey, the index might not be ideal, but the responses are descriptors. And so therefore anything that's kind of a list of descriptors makes sense in the index, especially in order to make it so that way we don't need to do like a new schema definition anywhere in the spec. And so I think that makes sense. And I think in the tag listing v2 proposal as well, I think that same argument rings true, because in the same thing, that's going to be essentially every tag that's listed is also a descriptor. It's going to have a media type, it's going to have a digest, it's going to have a size. We can throw an annotation on there for the actual tag name. But then he references the proposal in here for the repo listing. Repo listings are not descriptors, although John and Tianan are very creative at coming up with ways they can be. And I agree, you can make them that. So I guess the question is more like, are we still okay with that being an index? Like, is that a good default? Is there actually appetite for doing more of a whole bunch of new schemas for responses, or are we okay with just kind of overloading the one we have so we don't have to define new ones?
I don't like bespoke data structures. We already have several data structures and they work pretty well. We've proven that they work pretty well. And them being I would say isomorphic, but it's not even isomorphic. Them being literally the same data structures that we parse and use all the time is a useful property. You can take a referrer's response and push it straight to a registry. And that's a useful property. You can store it in an OCI layout. We don't have to design a new way to store this response in an OCI layout. It can just be a standard object.
So I can
So I
be
think
I can be contrarian. I'll be a little contrarian, mainly because I was the other one that was suggesting this in the past, and I really like his idea of an event because that has the ability to not just create a deleted. Maybe we'll have other events in the future. Maybe just start of the world. We don't know what happened before this date be an event. But in terms of how to store it in an OCI layout, that's a lot easier than storing it in a registry. The registry, we're saying this can be the API for the registry. They'll have to figure that out. For the layout, we could just define whatever new content we have as just another kind of manifest that can be stored in an OCI layout. And if the tool doesn't know how to interpret that, it sees a media type in the index it doesn't know how to deal with and is supposed to ignore it. And so it just ignores it.
do you really want to have to invent another media type? I don't.
I wouldn't be terribly upset at inventing something for a purpose like this. But it is one view of many. I'm pretty sure Sajay was on Team Tianon here. And so we're up to 2 and 2 now. And it's not a super strongly held opinion. It's not a big deal if I keep it in an index instead of a new media type. See, normally I'm the one that throws out the opinion and Tianon jumps in with the contrarian. Now Tianon jumped in with the view and I went contrarian on.
I guess I should probably raid the spoons drawer and actually comment on GitHub.
Jeff, do we absolutely help you in no possible way at all?
Yeah, it's a very standard, that's what I expect, really. So meeting my expectations is always not disappointing.
I think it's a great discussion, as you can see from it generating a response here.
Okay. I'll keep it as an index.
I think you'll make Tianon happy there, and I'm not terribly upset. But if there are more like myself and Michael out there that would be interested in moving forward with another thing, I mean, I'm still liking that whole event thing. It takes very little to make me excited.
Well, how are we annotating the event? Is it an annotation?
He was making a new application JSON
No, I mean the
media
original
type.
proposal. What did
Yeah,
we
so
do to
this
kind of
this
indicate that's an
yeah, a new data structure in there. It just had an event, a timestamp, and whatever the descriptor was called the target of what was being changed.
So in the original proposal with the index, we stick the created and deleted as annotations, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm on the keep it in index train there.
Oh, there we go, Jeff. Now you're up to 3 versus 2, so I think you're winning on the index.
Are you against that, Brent? Or are you just trying to be the contrarian though? Like
I'm not
just
strongly against
exploring.
it, but I feel like there is a value to having a new data structure there and not trying to abuse annotations. My fear of abusing annotations is that now you can't do something like pull up annotations without worrying about collisions and things along those lines. It also feels like it'd be a little more efficient if you had a well-known field that's a nice short field instead of whatever long annotation string is we ought to put in there. Save you a half kilobyte.
Well, if we could implement gzip on transport, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal.
Until you got the OCI layout and then you got to push all these bytes to disk. And my goodness, a whole extra kilobyte on disk. Terrible. I'm not really that upset.
Is there anything
Case in
stopping
point.
us from doing transport compression on these? Or do we explicitly say no from the client, never do transport compression?
I feel like that comes out of the box with a lot of these tools. You don't even see it.
I think Tianan did a lot of research into that, and I think there's a few things that like unintentionally make it harder than it should be in some cases. Like
So
it's not like explicitly forbidden, it's just accidentally difficult.
accidentally on our side or accidentally because of different implementations?
I don't want to speak. I forget. I forget.
Tianan, you are being nerd sniped.
Sorry, I was trying to find the comment we're looking at so that I could decide to respond, so I missed the context.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm the worst.
I mean,
Okay.
at least the self-awareness helps. No, this was does the spec actually prevent transport compression, or I said it
Oh,
I said it doesn't explicitly prevent it, but I think there are some things that make it accidentally difficult.
yeah, like the fact that with transport compression, the content length header is now the content length of the compressed data, not the original data, and you don't have the content length of the original data unless you get it from the parent object. But for like a manifest, you don't have a parent object necessarily.
How does that work with a head request? If I do a head request, can I say head request don't do compression? And then when I actually go to fetch the content, they're like, oh, you can compress it and have the registry make that
I think
decision?
so. Yeah. So I guess with the fact that most clients do a head request first now, maybe this is mitigated or can be mitigated.
Yeah. And for cases like this, I mean, we don't have the digest anyways, so we don't really care.
Yeah. I know for Roger's Q Labs OCI registry set of Go interfaces, this has been a sticking point because he's intentionally a very thin layer on the OCI APIs. So like he can't prescribe, we have to do a head request first.
Yeah. I guess my only comment here would be like we shouldn't design the APIs in such a way that we assume that content or transport compression cannot or is not used.
Yeah, I don't think the spec says that it has to be there. Like I think the spec uses should. Even providing the digest as a header is only a should.
Yeah, well, I guess what would be interesting is if the client could actually control that more thoroughly, where if it's requesting a manifest content, it already has the length to request compression, or the same way as if I'm compressing a blob, or if I'm requesting a blob and it's a media type that's not compressed, I could ask for transport compression.
Yeah, because it would be kind of silly to ask for transport compression on like a gzipped tar.
Yes. Many silly things about gzip tars, but yes, definitely that one too.
Yeah. But being able to proactively request transport compression for what you know is an uncompressed blob is interesting.
is.
theoretically possible to implement today. You'll just run into weird edge cases with clients like the one I linked in chat. But I think they're potentially resolvable. I don't think this is insurmountable. It would be maybe helpful if we put more of the descriptor in headers, but also not strictly necessary.
So what changes from the specs how we have to do to work around that? Instead of setting content length, we have to set our own header for descriptor length or something?
Yeah, something like that. Like that quote in the middle of the screen right there, that code block is a quote
Yeah.
straight from the Go standard library from the net package, the HTTP package in Go, where Go itself will clear out the content length value when there's transport compression because it transparently decompresses it, but then it can't tell you the content length from the headers anymore. Because that decompression happens as you read the body, not all up front, because you wouldn't want it to decompress into memory necessarily.
So does this mean that the Go client, when it sees a content length, won't do the compression, or is it doing the compression and stripping that header off and we just don't have anybody breaking with that?
It sees the content encoding and applies transparent decompression on the body reader and strips the content length header and uses it just for its own internal accounting. Because at that point, the content length is the compressed size, not the size you'll get from reading the body.
So I guess where I'm going, are clients today compressing data?
No. Transport compression, as far as I've seen, is very rare in registry clients and servers.
An HTTP protocol question: does the client always have to request compression in order to get compression, or can the registry or the server make that decision if it's not provided?
Oh shoot, where's John when you need him?
I think the client has to actually specify it as an accepts header.
I would hope so. But then I wonder if we would break a bunch of stuff if we on the client side started sending up that we accept the compression if we already know the content length.
I think the client might already send that header because I think net HTTP sends that header by default. And that I ran into this because I had a server that was then adhering to that header and replying with compressed content, and the client then breaks because it doesn't, or at least that's how it works in OCI registry here. I don't know if maybe the Containerd client is explicitly disabling transfer encoding.
The content length you're talking about there, does Go not compress it on the server end if you provide a content length? Or is it just setting that if there's no content length explicitly set, it will do it? Because that'd seem weird if it's like you manually set the content length and then Go overwrites that to -1 to decompress.
I mean, it'd be an illegal request because isn't the content link supposed to actually match the bytes being transferred? And therefore, if you compress it, but you set the content link to the original size, it's going to be an invalid HT. I mean, depending on how strict things are.
Yeah, I don't know if Go reads the content length after it does the initial parsing and setup. Are you thinking you could then take like the size from the descriptor and shove it back into the content length field on that response object?
No, I'm just wondering if it's automatically looking at that content length, and if the content length is set, it doesn't do the compression rather than overwriting it to -1 and compressing. I mean, it's certainly, I wouldn't expect it to compress and then still send the invalid value. I'm just wondering what the signal is.
Well, this is on the client side. This is on the response object that it creates from an HTTP response. So when that response specifies that it is content encoding gzip or deflate or something, then it sets things up so that when you read the body, you get the uncompressed bytes.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Yeah,
it
that
sets
makes
the
sense.
content length field to -1 because at that point you can't rely as a consumer of the body on the content length because the content length is the compressed size, not the uncompressed size that you're going to receive.
Okay. So I guess then to Jeff's question is, if you set that content length, does Go just treat that as an invalid response or just ignores it completely?
Well, keep in mind, you don't actually set the header on the request, you set a field on the request object. The request object has a section, or yeah, section for headers. You don't actually set the content length header. I'm frantically trying to pull it up because I'm hearing crickets, so I'm sure everybody's like, wait, what? This is what Jeff and I ran into when I was doing it the wrong way before. Which is, let's say I'm making a new request. We've got the method and the URL you're saying to, all that good stuff. We've got a section for headers. You could try to set the content length in the header. It doesn't look at that. It looks at this. Because it's got a whole another field in there on the request object itself.
Yeah, but what about the other way around for the server sending the response? Which in this case would be the response read from the client, but then the response sent from the server.
Yeah, so the server does its response, sends it, the client receives it. On the client side, the stuff that Tianon was quoting on the other page says that when I receive this as a client, I'm going to get this as a -1 because it's going to be unknown.
Yeah, but what's unclear is that did it ignore something from the server in that case? Or is it an invalid response?
Theoretically got dropped, but Tianon is sending us details here. Well, he's sending us other details, so I don't go back to the Go stuff because that's not Go.
Is Jeff wondering how we meandered so far away from the original issue that
I don't remember. What was the original format or
oh yeah,
index thing?
it was it was whether or not the extra 300 bytes was gonna completely break everything.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to go look into the code because I got the same question you do, Derek. And Tianon is saying no, that it won't compress it, but I still wonder if it's doing compression automatically under the covers and we're just not seeing it.
Yeah, I mean that could just be something we need to try out on the client side. Just my fear is uh whatever we do there will just start breaking because yeah, the some of these expectations are so rigidly defined and servers that I wouldn't be surprised if we started sending accept encoding and then some registry breaks.
Unless you're setting disable compression to true explicitly, you are sending accept encoding.
So I feel like servers can't be doing the transit encoding there, transfer encoding, because I check that content length in the conformance test specifically. And so the conformance would all be breaking all over the place if there was actual compression going on. Might be on the server side. Like the HTTP server might ignore that and say, okay, we're not going to do compression unless you turn something on the server side.
Well, that's a good point of where we could go and test that out is on the conformance side is if we have the length, do a head, get the length, and then request compression and see if the registry actually gives us a compressed value.
Yeah, I mean, in the responses, I'll pick on Zot just because I don't like picking on my own registry all the time. But in all of our requests, we do like a blob get. We are looking for content type, content length. We're verifying all those fields are there.
In the conformance test, do you set disable compression?
Pretty sure I don't.
So the conformance test might already fail if a registry were to send content encoding.
Correct. And so that's where I'm saying no one's come to us and said we're doing it wrong. And I'm pretty sure they would have failed the old conformance test too. We were looking at length
Yeah.
forever.
But content length is not a must in the spec, right?
You're gonna make me dig into the spec with 2 minutes ago. I'm gonna tap
Let's
out
see if I
timelines
can
on that one.
speed run it. A head request must contain content length with the size of the blob. So that answers Derek's earlier question. The spec does say a head must contain content length. I know I've done this Control F more than once.
Yeah, I
On a
think
post, content length must match the blob's actual content length.
forget what was it? It was isn't ECR that will do the content length on head but not on the get or something?
I don't know, but we don't specify content length must anywhere else.
Too bad. I'm checking it anyway.
Yeah, so that's a conformance test that's probably too prescriptive
Too bad.
because it's a violation of the HTTP spec.
We'll fix the spec.
The HTTP spec?
We'll fix our spec to make it a must.
Yeah, I'm going to fight you on that because that's a violation of HTTP. I'm going to get John to come back from the dead and help me fight you on that.
Let's see. I'm passing content length, but they're only how many places do I expect the content length? Yeah, I do expect a header in a few places. But this the manifest exists, this the manifest head request. All right. You nerd sniped me into running over by a minute here. I think we'll call it at that point. So thanks everybody that joined in. Thanks for everybody that had to leave early. And we will cycle back to this one and see who gets nerd sniped next week for another great Thursday meeting of OCI. Have a great rest of your.
I'll research a few things to go down.
All right. I appreciate it, Jeff.
It was
Take care, everybody.
wow.